I'll let you introduce yourself.
My name's Ethan Jamison. I don't know where you want me to begin. I guess I'm a grain merchandiser here in Abilene, Kansas, at Flint Hills Grain. So started that back in January. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I graduated in December with a degree in agricultural sciences and a minor in agricultural business management from Penn State University. Pennsylvania's home, and that's where I'm from. And I moved out here to Kansas to I guess, get a start in understanding grain merchandising in that industry. And, I interned in Abilene 2 summers ago. And then I guess I did a good enough job. They figured they'd have me back full time. So got an offer and decided to go with it. And here I am in Abilene. Wheat harvest is about to get rolling. And I know you invited me on the podcast from the whiskey night deal. And I just figured,
Yeah.
well, shoot, don't have a lot else to do other than golf and go to work. So yeah.
Heck yeah. So what drew you to going into the field of like work that you do?
So I didn't even know grain merchandising really existed. I knew the markets existed, and I knew the system was there in place, right? But I didn't know the inner workings of grain merchandising and all that kind of stuff. I knew about feedlots, and I had an ag sciences degree as an FFA growing up, so I was always around agriculture. But I did really where I'm from. There's not a lot of grain merchandisers per se. It's more you have a lot of feed companies, and you have a lot of grain coming in to feed a lot of different animals. You don't have a lot of grain coming out or leaving the state of Pennsylvania. If that makes sense. Versus here in Abilene, I get to touch all four commodities that are major. I get to touch corn, beans, sorghum, and wheat. And I didn't know it existed until actually, I think we figured out it was 3 years ago now, or 4 years, 3 years ago now. I sat down at a dinner beside my current boss, Austin Bouchard, at a dinner in Kansas City at a leadership conference called Agricultural Futures of America. And during that conference, I just sat beside him and another one of our merchandisers by pure random happenstance. We started talking a little bit, and the more we started talking, the more interested I started to become. And I had a picture of it pop up on my phone the other day, just a random memory. I wrote down his name, his email address, and his cell phone number. I called him. I want to say like that Monday after a Saturday night dinner in Kansas City. I say 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, I was interviewing to be an intern in Omaha, Nebraska. 3 months later, I was living in Abilene, or several months later, I was living in Abilene as an intern. And now, 3 years after that, I live in Kansas full time right now. I'm always traveling, but Abilene is home base for me currently. And yeah, it kind of got me started on a train of meeting new people, getting involved with the community, uh, talking and working with other merchandisers, different companies, different end users, and then farmers in our area. So just trying to build that relationship, understand not only the town and the marketplace as well, and whiskey night, how I met you and how I met a lot of other guys in this town, is kind of a catalyst that got me into meeting these new people and getting into grain merchandising. And because grain merchandising is not really about grain merchandising, it's more about the relationships you build, especially with your farmers and the producers in your area and then the end users as well. So yeah, I mean, I just got started by pure luck, pure random. Sat at a dinner beside the right guy at the right time in the right place, and here I am.
Yeah. So what is it exactly that a grain merchandiser does, like on a day-to-day basis?
No day is the same because the markets are always changing. So um, a big thing that I do is I talk with local producers. Wheat harvest is starting now, so we literally just got some first test samples tonight. So tomorrow and this coming week and the weeks following, a lot of wheat is going to start coming off. And a part of my job is to work with those farmers, work with end users, work with all the transportation and people in between, all the people at my elevator, and always be listening to the market. So my merchandising is a little different than some others. Some others just bring it into a facility and then they have someone else take it out of the facility and trade it into different markets. But for me, at our facility, we do a lot of cross country trading as well. So I feed Western Kansas feedlots, Great Bend, Lions, ethanol feedlots, other things like that. And then we also are located conveniently on both the UP and the BN Railroad. So I'm looking at 100 different things all day long. I'm looking at what the markets are doing. what the prices are doing. I'm looking at information coming in from all over the world to try to help me build a better picture of what the market is doing or why it's reacting in such a way. So I guess my job is to build relationships, talk to farmers, contract grain, make sure that I'm in line with the rest of the market and we are giving good, fair prices to all of our producers, right? Because without a big thing a lot of people don't understand or don't really think about is without producers, I don't have my job. We don't have our facility, we don't have a market, right? So we need to be in line with where everyone is for our producers and we try to give our producers I guess, kind of a top dollar and advantage over some others. So a really cool thing that we do in my job is we offer something called VPS products. It's called Viterra Producer Solutions. And Viterra is the parent company of Flint Hills Grain. We are a joint venture between Agmark and Viterra, formerly Gavilon, formerly DeBruce, soon to be Bunge. It's a little confusing, but names change all the time. And a big thing that I do is, I'm keeping tabs on conditions of crops in all parts of the country. So on a day to day basis, like I said, no day is the same as the other. The other day, or in tomorrow even, I will be going all around as wheat harvest is starting to try to get a better idea of yields, what this crop is looking like, test weight, protein, trying to see the bigger picture of the crop before it hits my facility so I know if we need to have certain space available, if we need to segregate stuff, if we need to be able to do this or that. So one day I could be on the road all day and I could just be in fields all day. So I'm both a merchandiser and kind of a crop scout on the same breath. And then the next day I could be on the phones all day long because we had a really big market rally and a lot of guys are trying to contract to the market high. And another day I could be just doing research, right? I could be learning about why the market's doing this or why the market's doing that. So it's different day to day. But the biggest thing is just maintaining relationships and having a good knowledge base and being informed. I think that's the biggest thing on a day to day merchandiser. And I know my answers are a little lengthy on this end, but it's just the job is very simple and very complex all at the exact same time.
No, I love your answers. I like how you kind of like dig into it versus just kind of blanket answers.
Yeah, I could tell you I buy and sell lots of corn, beans, wheat, and Milo, but that's not all that I do.
Yeah.
That scratches the surface of what I do.
So how do you guys get a test sample, and what exactly is it that you guys do with it and look for in it?
So, a big thing that we have to look for whenever we're marketing the grain, right? And that's the big advantage elevators have, right? We are trying. We have to value add in a way, right? Whether we value add through transportation, the mass quantity of it, or the mass quality of it, right? So, a big thing that we look for is test weight, dockage, foreign material, protein, all of these different factors, and we try to segregate it into different uh, sellable products. In an example, so like let's say there's a mill in Denver right now that is wants a 11.5 protein wheat and they want 60 test weight and they want this and this and this. So that's a big part of the job is being able to fulfill that demand, right? Because you can get a ton of wheat, but if you just mix it all together and you just put it into one grade sample, well, you kind of lost your big value add there, right? That's where a lot of grain elevators get their value add is to being able to make and blend, mix and blend plays into selling into certain markets because hard red wheat, different proteins determine different kinds of bread, different kinds of uses for it, and the millers are looking for certain specs. So we try to fulfill those certain specs to help keep America fed. So you could be working with a Graincraft, you could be working with a Kellogg's, you could be working with a Tyson Foods, you could be working with anyone on the mass market that's bringing in wheat, whether to make flour, well, ultimately to make flour, but to turn it into a myriad of products. That ability to have an idea of what kind of products or what kind of thing we can supply into the market is really important for a grain elevator.
Gotcha. So when you guys go out to get a test sample, like how do
Mm-hmm.
you guys do that?
So test samples are different than our yield samples and stuff like that. And right now we haven't been able to collect a lot because the wheat is turning so quickly. But essentially, what you do is you get enough heads in a square yard or in a however much it takes, depending on again uh, the bushel per acre of that field, the yield of that field, And what we do is you kind of put it in a 5 gallon bucket with a drill and chains attached. You fill it with heads. You spin it off until you get your physical wheat berry. And then you get a big enough sample of that we can run it through our machine and we can get our moisture, and we can make sure that moisture is a really big deal. Because if we get too high in moisture, it's not going to store long enough. It's not going to be, you know, a great product 5 months from now, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, right? So we want to be able to have a good moisture on all our product, and that's a lot of what guys are looking for right now is making sure their moisture is low enough when they bring it out of the field, it's storable for us. So that way we can actually market the product. Because wheat is one of those products that you can store almost indefinitely, depending on situation and circumstance. Obviously, indefinitely is a very open phrase there, but we're just looking for an idea of what's going to come our direction so we can prepare best, because we have so many different bins, so many different places to segregate certain kinds of wheat. Like, let's say we get wheat that is super high moisture. Well, I want to be able to blend that off and be able to make a normal or below average moisture product. That way it's better and we can, keep the market open to us.
Gotcha. How is it that you can tell how many bushel like the field is?
So I actually did the Kansas Quality Wheat Council tour, and on that tour, they taught us how to do bushel calculations and how to get into a field. And I was also with Romulo. He is the K State's head wheat PhD, and he runs all their wheat programs for K State. So what you do is you get out in the wheat field, you find a very average sample size, and you take a bunch of different um, calculations. And the way it works is you take a 12-inch row of wheat, you count the number of heads in that row, then you find a very average head in that 12 inches. You count the number of spikelets, and then you count the number of kernels per spikelet. You divide it by the row spacing, whether it's 7.5 inches, 10 inches, or 12 inches, and then you take it times 0.48. And that gives you your total bushel per acre average on that field. So it's really important for a producer to have that idea of, I think, what the bushel per acre might be, so they can better, set themselves up to maybe forward contract some more bushels or some less bushels, depending, because you really don't want to forward contract anything more than you're comfortable with. And the last thing you want is to forward contract more than you grow. So that can get into a myriad of issues. So it just gives you a better example of this field did this in these conditions with this weather. So that helps us build an idea of, with this weather pattern, what happens to the wheat, and we can kind of look at it on a larger market scale and try to prepare for it.
Gotcha. So it's pretty much trying to predict how to manage the amount of
Yeah.
wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So with doing all that, do you have to go to other states and travel, or do you kind of just stay around the area? Or
So it depends, right? We stayed in Kansas mainly for the week tour. So I was in Kansas. We went all the way out to Colby down into like the Ulysses and southwestern corner of Kansas, back to Wichita. And for us, I'm more concerned about our direct draw area in Abilene. That way I know to prepare, like, let's say if I need to have another bin available, if I need to make more space, because the last thing you want to do is run out of space. You don't want farmers to be unable to deliver and run out of space, and that runs into a lot of issues. So I want to know, okay, if this is coming at me, do I need to have this open? Do I need to have this available? Do I need to have a train sitting in Abilene next Monday morning or next Sunday night or whenever to make more space to be able to better prepare for this harvest? And again, I'm very fresh and new into this, and I'm learning through the lens of my manager and other traders that I'm working with. But it's still good to kind of get that bigger picture of how the whole market is going to look.
gotcha. So this year, I heard that the wheat's looking pretty good.
Yeah. Comparing it to years past, like last year, it was not a very good year. And then when I was an intern, again, it wasn't a great year. But this year, the wheat yields are looking good. They're looking very good. I don't want to, count the chickens before they hatch per se, but I like the crop that we see. It's whenever we get these better yielding years, I think it's better. And what we can see is in a relatively fair market value on the wheat, right? We're not getting a 15 bushel year at $8 wheat. We're getting a 50 bushel year, a 60 bushel year, and we're still above $6 cash. So every farmer needs to know their break even and working with that, and the crop is looking good. And I want the maximum value added for the producers that we have. And with that, it's just I would much rather see big, good bushel years than anything else. It's you want that good product, you want that good yield, and you want the best solution for your local farmers, right? So for us, I think it's looking very good. I'm curious to see where Kansas lands in total production come this fall and next winter. But I have my own predictions, so do a lot of other people. But yeah, it's a very good year, I think. Not well, maybe not very good in my eyes, very good, but a good year
Yeah.
for wheat production.
So I know it probably depends upon how good the year is, but how often does you guys have to have a train come through and empty into that?
So it completely depends on harvest. It is completely dependent on market, on carry in the market. If the market would pay us to carry that wheat at not lose money, it just completely depends on where the demand is, and that's the big thing about why my job is different every single day. There could be a new bid or a new offer or a new value in the market that wasn't there yesterday. There could be a new sale. There could be a new uh, purchase. It's just all so changing that you never really know, right? It's completely dependent on the marketplace. So if no one is out there demanding wheat like a lot of exporters right now, right? So the U.S. is a large exporter of all commodities to the rest of the planet. And if the rest of the planet is saying, "Hey, I really don't need this wheat right now," then it might store for a long time. And there's really big storage facilities that are made for that, right? We have Viterra Wichita, there's Cargill Salina, there's these really large elevators that are storage houses. They are built for long carries and long storage and to hold a lot of bushels. So the market dictates what the market dictates. So if it's saying if I have the wheat and my best value at that time is to go send a wheat train, then yeah, I'll send a wheat train. But if it's not, then I have to figure out an alternative solution that still makes sense economically, but also makes sense on from a physical standpoint too. Because I have a fall harvest coming that I need to prepare space for that as well. So I need to calculate and figure all of this into every decision that we make. And again, I'm still on the young side of this and the learning side of this, so I'm not making those 30,000 foot view decisions yet. But it helps you really see the bigger picture of, well, I could ship a wheat train the third, fourth, fifth week of harvest, depending, right? But I have no idea if we will. It just depends. It completely depends on the market.
Gotcha. How is it that you guys find like space? Like, say if the cost doesn't align with
Mm-hmm.
bringing in a train, how is it that you guys go about finding space to hold that
So
wheat?
we have both a flat site and an upright storage facility here in Abilene. So we have a really big building that was actually built by the government in the 80s that can store, if we have proper throwers and we have everything set right, store up to 2.5 million bushels inside. So that was designed for Milo carries in the 80s. Now it's can be used for anything else. So that's a big decision, right? If I have all this wheat coming at me and the market's saying, "Hey, I don't need it right now. I need it 8 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now," well, then I say, okay, that helps me make a better decision. I can take it out to that flat site storage building, right? And I can put it out there and then we can keep it out there for longer. So that's one of those things you have to look at, right? For carrying it farther into the market or shipping it right away. So you just have to look at everything on a month to month basis and make sure everything aligns. You have to look at your costs of carry, you have to look at your interest, you have to look at your cost of moving it, how much you're going to lose by storing it in a certain facility at a certain place at a certain time. So it's very interesting how it all works out and aligns.
Seems like there's a lot of moving pieces to all of it.
There is, and there's constantly moving pieces. But the more you keep learning about it and the more you understand it, the easier everything starts to work together.
Yeah. How long can you store the wheat for?
It depends on where you're storing it, what moisture it's at. Storage for wheat is almost indefinite. Like a lot of wheat at certain elevators is on open storage for almost ever. If you would ever want to, it depends. Uh, but to be honest, I don't know the exact amount of time you would store wheat before you could get rid of it. But there's years you can carry wheat for years if you have the right storage capabilities.
So you said that you were going to one of the other states and their cash crop was crushed bean,
Uh, so
or
so that's a bean crush is a completely different end of the marketplace. So there's bean crush facilities in Kansas, there's bean crush facilities in Louisiana, and that's Bunge's big play. They crush a lot of beans, and they use that for like a jet fuel drop in. There's a new facility going into Cherryville, Kansas. It's a joint venture between Azure and Bartlett Grain, and they're going to be turning that into jet fuel drop in from bean crush. So bean crush is like doubling in capacity in Kansas, so it's going to make a more market driver for beans. And it's also in Canada, it's in Spain, it's all over the globe, and it's another driver of ethanol and this crush demand that we're seeing.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So back to when you went to Penn State, what
Mm-hmm.
drew you to pick the specific college you went to?
Pennsylvania's home. Penn
Yeah,
State was less than an hour away. I did FFA in college, right? And I did be like we were at the Bryce Jordan Center at Penn State for FFA, and I was up on that stage, and I knew a lot of people that went to Penn State. It's home. It's kind of hard to explain, and also in-state tuition at a big public state school that was very reasonable at the time, and I got a really good education. It just made a lot of sense for me to go to Penn State.
gotcha. What was your favorite thing about school?
The people that I met and the things that I did. I joined a fraternity. I joined a co-ed agricultural fraternity called Alpha Zeta at Penn State. I loved it there. Had a really great time with a lot of great people. Made friends for life. I went on really cool adventures. I went to Italy with Dairy Science Club. I was president of Farm Bureau at Penn State for a tenure there, and I got to learn I feel like the classes were secondary to everything I did. It was more about the people I met and the things that I learned at the time there. And I really, really liked just the experiences that I had. Everything else seems to be a little secondary.
Yeah,
Like there's only one or two classes that I really look back and I'd be like, I would do those again in a heartbeat. One was a backpacking class called Aurora, where for your week before your freshman fall semester starts, you go backpacking for like 4 or 5 days. I can't remember our exact length in different parts of the world. So one crew went to Vermont, one went to like an inner city deal. I did the one in Pennsylvania through Rothrock State Forest, and I enjoyed it. I loved the heck out of that class. We literally went backpacking, and I love that.
yeah,
And another class that was my favorite was actually my meat science class. We were in a butcher shop for that class. And our family grew up butchering a lot of our animals, scrapple, doing pigs, butchering all the deer that we ever shot. So I really enjoyed those classes. So I guess my favorite experiences were ones where I was super hands on and when I was actually doing something. I really enjoyed those.
yeah. That's how I was in school. I didn't really actually like school specifically, like the
Mm-hmm.
subjects, but I was just like being around the people and like
Mm-hmm.
experiencing. I didn't go to college, but in high school. So that backpacking trip, what all did you guys kind of do? You had to stay out there for 4 or 5 days. You said.
Yeah, so essentially, I still have the backpack, and my brother just did it too. And what it is you get kids from every sort of background. Like we had kids that had never been in the woods before, let alone slept in the woods for several days. And it was just a really awesome practical class where they taught you certain knots to tie, certain things about ourselves, and certain ways to set up camps and tents and cooking and carrying all of our weight in our packs and stuff like that. And it was just a great experience to get outside. And it's called Aurora at Penn State. Uh, Jen, I remember her name, ran the program, and it was an awesome experience for me. I would do that again in a heartbeat. They offered that class every year. I would have taken it, but you can only take it as a freshman.
Gotcha.
So really awesome experience. Looking back, I kind of maybe regret not being one of the leaders for that hiking trip because you get two people that lead a group of 6, 7, or 8 people through the woods for a couple of days. And I wish I probably would have done that because I really enjoyed it so much. But again, time and energy and effort and all the places you have to be, sometimes you just can't make it work. But I think that class just taught you very practical things and hiking and getting along with people and being in the woods and respecting nature and all these other things. Like I grew up in the woods with my grandpa,
Yeah.
so I loved it. I loved every second of it. Now there's some kids that probably were like, I got bit by bugs for 3 days. We got caught in a thunderstorm, which we did, and then all this other stuff. I loved every second of it. But there's some people that might not have, and it's all power to them. But I really enjoyed my time.
So some of the people that had never gone like out in the woods before, did you see them kind of like adjust to it and like it, or was it like I still don't like it?
No, we had a kid that did not want to go to the bathroom. He did not like the idea of pooping in the woods. He hated that idea. And it didn't bother me at all. I'd probably done that during archery season a ton, but it's you saw them towards the end slowly get more acclimated to it, because if you didn't get acclimated, you were going to hate it the whole time,
Yeah.
right? There's no point in just being miserable the whole time if you just can embrace it a little bit. And some were better prepared than others, either physically or like what they actually brought along for boots and stuff like that. But I saw a kid that I haven't really talked to him in a while, but he wouldn't even sit on the ground because he was scared of bugs type deal. By the end of it, he was more in tune with things and was far more open. So yeah, I got to see that progression a little bit in some people. Yeah, you didn't have to convince me twice to do it. I loved it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's how I grew up, like out in the woods, like out on the farm.
mm-hmm.
So like that was kind of. I would wish it was my first nature, but
Yeah,
have to live in houses now. So,
yeah.
how much like food did you guys have to take out?
Oh, I think we had it all prepped. It was all pretty well scaled out. They figure, they figure every meal and stuff like that. So we would make a meal that I still like if I go camping, like dried mashed potatoes. Everything was based around water and
Yep.
rehydrating stuff. So like you do mashed potatoes and summer sausage and cheese and hot sauce for like a mashed potato bowl, or you did sandwiches, or you brought along pepperoni and cheese and peanut butter and stuff like that, and you brought trail mix. And I don't remember all of our meals. Like I think a lot of it was based around like rehydrating more and stuff like that. So oatmeal for breakfast every day, something light that's easily water absorbable. Uh, Something I still eat occasionally is like a tortilla with extra sharp cheddar cheese or extra sharp Colby Jack cheese, pepperoni, and a little bit of hot sauce.
Mm,
I still like that, which is weird,
sounds good.
but I like it. But so yeah, we'd eat stuff like that. We'd have a meal every night, try to get something figured out. And you just learn to literally eat everything, put a little bit of water in it and drink it, and you don't waste anything. So it was cool to do that.
Yeah. So did you guys get like a list of stuff that was recommended to bring out, or how did
Yeah,
that
I'm
work?
trying to remember. So I actually gave my backpack to my brother to go do his, because I have an Osprey, and I already had everything that he would need, but it was a basic list, like boots that were broken in. Don't show up in Timberlands. Don't
Yeah.
do this. Bring hiking shoes or boots that were broken in. Bring a bunch of changes of socks. Right, get wool socks. Get merino wool socks. Bring Don't bring anything cotton. Don't do that because you cannot get it dry. It will stink. Don't bring cotton. And just I can't remember what else we were to bring, like hand sanitizer, toiletries, some really small stuff, right? But they supplied almost everything else. But other than the few basic amenities, like like not even some toothpaste, some other stuff like that, just to make your trip a little bit more comfortable. I supplied my brother with instead of the foam pads that were thin that everyone else sorted out. My brother had the nice inflatable REI one, and he had the pillow and stuff like that. So that was also inflatable. Makes a world of difference. And like a bug net for your face so you don't get eaten alive at night. You don't have to get all sweated sleeping in a sleeping bag. So, there's these little things that can make a really big difference. So I really enjoyed it, and the packing list was not that crazy or extensive. A lot of it was provided. Like my first trip, I didn't own my own hiking bag. I used one of the ones they provided. They have probably 100 of them. So, and then your tent, you don't bring a tent. There is no tents. You literally take a slack line, run a tarp over it, sleep on a tarp on a mat, and you're like sleeping in a like right next to people you've never met before.
Yeah.
So it's one way to really introduce you because you're sleeping shoulder to shoulder with them, trying to get comfortable. But the nice thing is you're usually so exhausted, it's not that hard to sleep.
Yeah.
And that was the nice thing is if you put enough miles in the day before, you sleeping was not the problem. It was all fun and games though until it started thunderstorming on like our second to last day or our last day. So we had a good time with it. I really enjoyed it, and I think about that often of things that I really enjoyed about college was those people. I still talk to some of those people that I met. I still know them, or I know more friends of them, and yeah, I think it's a really great experience and time. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool that a school has a class like that where
Hmm.
you go out and do something like that because it's not really heard of.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, not trying to talk a whole lot about the camping trip, but um, what was like? the most favorite part? Like, how far would you guys hike in a day's period? Did you have
Section,
like a certain point that you had to get to, or
yeah, we had points that we had to get to. They would probably tell me exactly. I still have my purple lizard map that have everything, where we were, what route we took, what trails we took. I want to say like the first night you only hike in like a mile or two. You're not doing anything crazy, just getting to a point where you're comfortable. Then some days you're doing like 10 miles. So and 10 miles is on the mountains is completely different than 10 miles
yeah,
flat, whether it's up or down. So I don't want to say we did anything crazy. I think like over 4 days we did maybe 30 something miles or 35 or 40. I think there's so many routes dependent. I wish I knew like exactly the mileage that I did, but I would go do it again without even thinking. I'd go do it tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So besides Pennsylvania being home, what's your favorite place about Pennsylvania?
So family is there, obviously. I would say that's the number one favorite thing about it. But to be honest, the mountains. I That is the one thing that I do truly miss. I never thought I would miss them as much as I do, but just the mountains with our home, like all the creeks and the streams and the creek
Yeah,
and all that little stuff that I never really maybe truly appreciated as much. Like going fishing with my grandpa or my sister or going hunting and getting out and doing all those things and I really, really enjoy that about Pennsylvania. Also, our food I think is really good. I really like
yeah,
Pennsylvania. I like Pennsylvania Dutch food. Love myself a good cheesesteak. Big Philly kid, so I I think the food, the culture, the people, the family, everything about it, and it's how do I say this? I live an hour from like some pretty major locations, and it doesn't take long to get out in the middle of nowhere. I feel like Kansas is a very similar way. You can drive a very short distance, and you can feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. And I felt the same way at home, and I loved that.
yeah.
So that's one thing I do miss is a lot of the trees too. I never realized how much I missed all the green and all the trees and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say the landscape, family obviously, and the culture.
Hmm. Yeah, when I was like 5 or 6, when I was in Pennsylvania, because as we talked before, I have
Mm-hmm.
family up there. I call them the Broccoli Mountains because it looks like a bunch of broccoli to
Mm-hmm.
me as a kid.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's kind of like one thing that I miss is just like the different scenery.
Mm-hmm.
And so down from like where my grandparents live, they have a little creek that runs in front of their house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was also clay, so like every summer I'd go back there and I'd build up a little dam and
Mm-hmm.
swim and everything. But then of course, like by next summer, it's washed out. But
Mm-hmm.
also seeing bears,
Mm-hmm.
you don't see that in Kansas unless you're going to a zoo. But
Yeah, I shot my first bear in 2019. Shot a 300-pound boar on opening day of bear and deer and rifle season with my grandpa. That was pretty cool. So that's a big bear rug that I got. The meat was actually very good from that bear. It was actually really good. So yeah, just like bear and stuff like that. I've bear, turkey, deer. I've never killed an elk. Never, never really super been interested in shooting an elk in Pennsylvania. I more wanted to come out this direction, like out to Colorado to try that. But yeah, that's like you say, like bear and stuff like that was a normal occurrence if you saw a bear run
yeah,
across the road.
also the water back there, like all the ponds and creeks and everything are just like clear, like you
Mm-hmm.
can actually see through the water versus muddy.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a really big difference. I'm used to trout fishing in the spring, and
Yeah,
out here there's just no trout. Right, there's
yeah,
very little. I don't even know where trout would be here. There's not really enough quick moving water at a consistent pace. So yeah, and that's a big thing we did growing up was like a trout derby at our local ambets where we'd stock a bunch of trout for kids and let them fish them and grow up fishing those trout streams and around my house and catching some smallmouth bass in the creek. So it's just a completely different, ecosystem and environment compared to there.
yeah. So what was it like hunting a bear? Like, had to be
I
pretty exciting.
It was exciting. I guess hunting a bear was no different than hunting deer.
Okay.
I've archery hunted since I could hold a bow. I shot a buck with a crossbow when I was probably 10, maybe younger. I can't exactly remember, but no, it was more of a. You rarely see bear in the woods in Pennsylvania, especially where I'm from, and I just happened to see it at the right time at the right place, and it was more of a. I my brother actually saw it. My brother saw it, went bear, and then I didn't even think. I just that muscle memory and shot it, and I wasn't sure if I hit it or not because you can't really. It's hard to tell when they're still running because I didn't drop them and he was going over the crest of a hill, and I was worried that he was going to get towards water, and I didn't want it to die in water or something like that, because I thought I had put a pretty good shot on it. Well, I went up to it, and it didn't make it more than 20 yards. Luckily, it ran toward the field. It was a little easier to get out of the woods, but turns out I smoked it and took the top of its heart off. So made the shot, and I feel like that's how I've shot a lot of deer, which I really didn't have time to think about, especially in rifle season. Archery is a completely different game, but in rifle season, I didn't have time to think. It was, just in the woods with my family on a opening Pennsylvania fall deer season, and yeah, I just saw it, shot it, and didn't like it. It didn't process till after,
Yeah.
and that excitement and that little shake and that little hug with your grandpa. I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah, the very first deer I ever shot, I don't remember what age I was. I was fairly young. It was the very last day. It started snowing. It was cold, and I had seen a couple bucks, but I was like waiting because there was one that I really wanted, and it never came through. And it was almost getting a little bit darker out, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Well, doesn't look like I'm gonna get anything this
Mm-hmm.
season." And then, sure enough, I seen this little doe, and I had a buck or doe tag, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna go for it. Might as
Mm-hmm.
well get the meat. So I got it, ran up there, and it wound up being a little button buck. I mean, the
Yeah.
nubs on it were just super
Mm-hmm.
small, but I was like excited. What was funny, I was actually on the phone with someone at the time, like just talking like you and I are,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I was just surprised to see the deer literally walk probably 25, 30 yards in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like, I don't know how I didn't scare it away by talking, but
Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about archery season is I've had deer literally lay right below my tree stand, and I will pay attention more to them than I will the rest of my surroundings because they'll let you know what's coming.
yeah,
And yeah, that's something I really like about the woods too. It wasn't even about killing something all the time. It was more just about being in the woods and just sitting there in silence. A lot of people have a lot of different stress relievers. I would say sitting in an archery stand, watching the stars, and then watching the sun comes up, you get that little bit of anxiety. You see all these little shadows. Is that a deer? Is that a deer? You
yeah,
make stuff up in your head. Like, is that a buck? Is that a. But to be honest, that's some of the most relaxing moments I've ever had in my life. Is just by myself on a lock on stand, up in a tree, just standing there, just listening and
yeah.
watching.
What's your favorite animal to hunt for?
Definitely whitetail deer.
Yeah,
Archery hunting, I really, really enjoy it. All the intricacies of the rut and working with all that kind of stuff, and kind of working scrapes and trying to pay attention to the wind and where you all have to be. And I have a compound, so I really like that aspect too. Of you have to put in reps to be good and be consistent and do it ethically. So I would say archery, whitetail is definitely on the top of my list. I also really like pheasant and quail hunting. That's up there too. I grew up squirrel hunting as well, stuff
yeah,
like that, small game. But yeah, archery whitetail deer is at the top of my list.
gotcha. What kind of bow do you run?
Triax. So my
Triax.
grandpa, I don't know what year that came out, but my grandpa said, "Well, it's finally time to. You're old enough. You can pull a bow back to enough poundage that you can, reasonably kill a deer." And I had used a, I had used Matthew's smaller system. I can't remember the exact name of it, but they're super adjustable. And if anyone that shoots Matthews knows what bow I'm talking about. And then I think it was either my junior or senior year of high school. My grandpa said, "Well, it's time to get a big boy bow." So now I still shoot that triax, and I don't think the technology has really changed that much. It's a really short axle to axle. I got the one I wanted. I wanted the carbon fiber one in the gray steel, and yeah, I need to get new arrows for it and change some stuff on it for this coming fall. But yeah, I'm running a Matthews Triax, and I like Matthews a lot. I like their mission, like what they stand for. I really like their bows. My brother's a Hoyt guy, so a little bit of contention there. But to be honest, I think I really like my Matthews. It shoots great, and I love it.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about archery?
Just that quiet, that you're watching, you're paying attention. I learn more about deer in a tree stand than I will have ever read in any other situation. Just sitting there, watching their movement, seeing, how the wind plays a factor, trying to be not only silent but not have any scent on you. Just again that observation. I think that's my favorite thing. And then that hope when you get a buck coming up to you and your heart starts pounding, you get that little and then it's like cold out or it's snowing out, and you're trying to pull back this really heavy bow, and you're not stretched, and you're just pushing, and but you lock in, and when you make the shot, I don't think there's anything more rewarding than putting a good shot on a deer with a compound bow. I think that's like one of the pinnacles of hunting.
Do you have like a process that you say to yourself in your head when you're pulling back?
Uh, for me, so I have like these points of like what I'll do. Like I'll put my thumb on my cheek or the back of my neck, depending. Like I don't use a thumb release. I use a trigger, and it's just I go through those reps and I just breathe. I almost tell myself to breathe, just breathe.
Yeah.
Like especially, it's one thing. You know, what's the funny thing is if you don't have any time, I'm not freaked out. If I don't have time, and I just let's say a buck's running through hot on a doe, I don't have time. I have to go meh, meh. I'm not really even shaking. But if I have time, he's moving in slow, and I have to think about it. That's when that little bit of shaking, that little bit of your breath starts. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. But no, and again, my grandpa shot competitively. He shot archery competitively, and he taught me how to shoot. And it's you're picking the smallest target, and you're not punching the trigger. You never punch the trigger. You let that trigger go. You almost get surprised by it. That's where you want to be. You want to be so comfortable that you're getting surprised by that trigger. And just those little things that you remind yourself, like you just calm down. You're shaking a little bit. You plant yourself, and you get that calmness to you. And then you make a good shot. I don't think there's anything more rewarding. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to my first archery fall Kansas buck season. So always looking for land to hunt and always looking for a new place to go and just trying to find that spot and just try to get my first Kansas buck. And
Yeah.
that's half the reason I got my Kansas residency
Yeah.
was because an out of state buck tag was like $400 something.
Jeez.
So I got an in-state buck tag. I got an in-state Kansas license. Now I got an in-state hunting license. Now I'm getting a in-state Kansas buck tag for the fall. I'm really excited.
Gotcha.
And to be honest, even if I don't kill anything this fall, I still will probably have had some awesome times in the tree stand, just
Oh
seeing
yeah.
a different way of deer because the deer out here are completely different from the deer back home. Pennsylvania is half the size, and I think we have like 4 times as many deer as you guys do. So it's just a completely different environment. But your buck are considerably larger than Pennsylvania's are. So it's just a matter of getting those reps in, getting in the woods, getting that scouting time in, getting your trail cameras up, knowing what your plan is, and just finding the time too.
Yeah. Do you prefer to hunt in the mornings or afternoons?
Mornings.
Mornings.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's anything I will like I don't know what it is. I like hunting both, but I prefer the morning. I like that sunrise sit. I think that's and I think if you're gonna kill big buck, I've killed more deer. I actually shouldn't say that. The biggest buck I ever shot I shot on like a Saturday afternoon, just randomly. But I love those morning sits. When the world's coming alive and you're already there waiting, I don't think there's anything better.
Yeah. Do you get yours mounted after getting them?
Yeah, it depends on how big it is. My mom has one mounted. I have a buck mounted. I do usually do if they're not huge. I just get a European. Uh, but yeah, no, it all depends on the deer. If I shot a really nice big Kansas buck, I would get it mounted.
Yeah. Um. So whitetail's your favorite
Hmm.
to hunt. What
Hmm.
would be your secondary?
No, definitely pheasants. I
Pheasant.
really like pheasant hunting. I like working with dogs. I like the whole going through the process and knowing what to do. And I love pheasant and dove hunting, and not dove hunting. Well, that too, but quail hunting as well. That's something about quail and pheasant hunting is yeah, that's right up there too. I love it.
Have you ever gone dove hunting?
Yeah, yeah. Back home, we've gone dove hunting. Personally, I don't think they really taste that great, and I really don't. I don't have an interest. Like if I'm gonna shoot something, I want to eat it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think that's a really big reason I have no interest in shooting a lot of Canada geese or a lot of snow geese or anything like that. It's just I don't like the taste of them that much, or maybe I just haven't learned how to cook them the proper way. But for me, if I'm going to go hunt it, I want to eat it. And I went quail hunting, and unfortunately, I had pheasant loads in, and I hit some quail at some pretty close ranges with a pheasant load. And there's not much left when you do that, but I still had a blast doing it. And I try to not be wasteful in anything I do, and
Yeah.
that's a big part of hunting too. Is I love cooking,
Yeah.
like backstrap wrapped in bacon after it being
Oh man.
marinated, or that's a big thing too. I love all that.
Yeah. What's your favorite game meat to eat?
Oh, venison.
Venison.
Yeah, not even close to anything else. Good venison.
I don't know. I kind of like elk.
Yeah, it's just was never a part of my diet. We
Yeah.
just never had a lot of elk growing up. I'm sure I could learn to like it the more I could get into it, but the first thing I think of is venison.
Have you ever had bison before?
Yeah, yep. I've
Bison's
had
pretty
bison.
good.
Yep. Our neighbor back home actually raises bison.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so just a little pocket of Pennsylvania there. So yeah, I've had bison, but yeah, venison is I love it.
Mm. What's your favorite fish to fish for?
Oof. To be honest, I really like smallmouth bass fishing in
Yeah.
the Tuscarora Creek in back in Pennsylvania. I love that. I don't know what it is. I like, we can throw 25 different kind of baits, and that's a big thing. I also really like trout fishing, but bass fishing either on the river or the bigger creeks is definitely my favorite. Mainly because you're constantly casting, you're
Yeah.
constantly doing something, and that constant motion I really like.
Yeah. I like a mix of both. I also like catfishing.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'll go out with just like a little pole and catch some greenies or like
Mm-hmm.
sunfish, and then I'll put like a circle hook through their back,
Mm-hmm.
and then cast them out with some weight on it, and
Mm-hmm.
then just let it do its thing. Catch I like flatheads and blues are my favorite, but
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while I'll catch a good channel cat and fillet it, and it's pretty good. You like catfish?
Yeah, to eat them, not really that much. I've gone catfishing before growing up in high school and stuff with some buddies on the Susquehanna River and over at Walker Lake back in central Pennsylvania. I did like sitting around a campfire with my buddies all night, just talking and just waiting for that bell to ring, that little
Yeah,
bell on the end of that
yeah.
rod to ring. So yeah, no, I have some pretty good memories of that too.
What's have you ever gone on like a big fishing or like hunting trip like somewhere outside of state that you're in?
Not really anything that's crazy notable. I guess this coming fall is going to be my bigger, my Kansas archery experience and trying to get that in and get those reps in. And it's nice now that I'm so close to Colorado. I could very easily see myself going out to try to do an elk hunt in Colorado. The
Yeah,
biggest problem is you need a support system. Like if I go shoot an elk by myself, I would definitely need some help getting it, caped, getting it processed, getting everything moving. It's hard when you're just an individual,
mm.
and I'm sure I could do it. I just need to prepare better and get ready for it. So I'm excited for this coming Kansas archery trip.
Is there any animal that you would like to hunt that you've never hunted besides elk?
I mean, I've always wanted to do a mule deer hunt. I've always seen them, and I've never really had an an opportunity to really go after them at a capacity. I would like to do a mule deer hunt, like a Colorado or a Montana or an Idaho mule deer hunt.
Yeah, I want to get one of the mountain goats or like a mountain lion.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool too. The goat tags are ridiculously expensive.
And the scene, what I heard, I think this is correct. Not 100% sure, so don't I'll have to fact check it.
Hmm.
But I think it's only like 5% of people, like 5% of tags or something, ever even get filled
Hmm.
on goats,
Yeah.
just because of how complicated it is to actually even
Hmm.
reach them, and
Yeah.
then getting them is pretty hard, I guess.
Yeah, I've never really gotten into that side of the big rocky hunting, mainly because just we're on the East Coast and it's such a trip. Like you have to take weeks, right, to get out
Yeah,
to where they are and do it all right. So that's in the future plans is to do some trips like that and really get into it. But yeah, I have a lot going on, and honestly,
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, a big hunting trip is kind of on the back burner right now.
yeah. I've always wanted to go on like. I wish I could just like. Eventually, one day, I want to take just like an entire month off
Hmm.
and backpack clear into the woods wherever and camp and hang out and hunt and fish
Hmm.
for whatever and live off the land for like a month just to
Hmm.
experience it. Because I was something about just like being in the woods and being, I don't know, like being in town, it just feels like you're part of like a beehive and there's always just
Hmm.
this hum and noise and bills and all this stuff. And then when
Hmm.
you're out there, it's just like all that stuff's gone. There's no
Hmm.
noise. It's just you hear nature itself. It's very peaceful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so your family is pretty big into hunting, it seems
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
and archery. Do you think that that's probably the main reason why you got into it?
Oh yeah, my
Yeah.
grandpa. Without my grandpa, I would not do half the stuff that I do. So yeah, he's the pretty much the entire reason that I really got into it in the capacity that I did. Yeah, so my brother hunts, my mom hunts, my dad hunts, my grandpa hunts. My little sister's a little young, we'll get her into it, but a majority of my family, my friends, a lot of people I grew up around hunted. I remember in elementary school, we always got the first 2 days off of buck season. That Monday and Tuesday, we always got them off because I wasn't going to show up to school, regardless if they gave us off. But no, it's a huge part of my culture and just growing up, and I want to continue that.
What's your favorite caliber to shoot?
I really like the 280 Remington.
Yeah.
It's a 30, just a 30-06 neck down, and I shot my bear with 280 Remington. I shot a lot of deer with 280 Remington. My grandpa reloads that round. It's between that and a 7mm 08. I really like that caliber too. Just a 7mm 30, a 308, and again, a great caliber that you can go up and down in grain. My first rifle ever was a Savage that was cut down ridiculously short when I was super small, and I want to say that was only like 120 grains. So it had a muzzle brake on it too, so a very low grain cartridge that anyone could really shoot. And then my grandpa eventually got me into the 280, and you can really go up in grain and powder on those. So yeah, probably a 280 and then a 7mm 08. Eventually, I would like to get myself like a 280 Ackley improved, like get it more into more of like a little bit of a mountain rifle type situation. But to be honest, I think they 30-06 is God's caliber, and I brought a 30-06 out here because I had to choose between some calibers because I couldn't bring everything, right?
Yeah.
So I chose a caliber that was super readily available, and you can kill anything in North America with 30-06.
Yeah.
I would have brought the 280, but again, no one has 280 Remington readily available really anywhere, and the 30-06 is accessible at literally any gun shop ever. So that's a big reason I brought it. But yeah, the 280 Remington is my favorite caliber.
What do you think of the AR platform?
I, you know, to be honest, the ARs never really enticed me that much. I have shot ARs. I have one. I've shot fox with ARs. I've gone coyote hunting with ARs, but I don't know what it is. I'm more inclined to bolt guns. There's something that just pulls me into over and under shotguns and bolt action rifles. That's my bread and butter.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little older in that logic. I like the older guns. Like I love the old Model 7s, the 700s, some of those old Rugers. Those are the guns that really like if I was offered, if you would put a wall of guns in front of me, you could put probably every automatic AR platform. But if you offered me like a really beautiful Remington 700 in a certain caliber of whatever, if you offer me every automatic AR or whatever, and you put a Remington 700 Mountain LSS 280, I'm picking that one.
Yeah.
That's where I find them way more practical.
Yeah.
The ARs are fine, and I think they serve certain purposes. But for me and my practicality and what I would use them for, I like my bolt guns.
Yeah. I definitely like a bolt action. I would say my favorite like rifle like to hunt with is a 30-30 lever action.
Yeah, yeah,
I love this.
yeah. Those 30-30s too, those Marlins and those Henrys, they have a special place in my heart too. I like the more old school guns. I think they're far more practical.
Yeah.
I think a old bolt gun or an old lever gun is far more practical than any of the newer stuff we're coming out with today. Especially a lot of the semi stuff. So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I'd like to get like a tactical style 30-30 lever action.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be pretty sweet to build up and either hunt or just to have.
Yeah.
But well, what's your opinion on obviously Kansas is different than a lot of states,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems like there's instances where uh, people think that gun control is the answer. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, that's a really touchy subject for a lot of people. I am in the position of the people that have the most guns are probably the safest people on the planet, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up around a ton of guns. I grew up shooting sporting clays with my grandpa, right? So I grew
Yeah.
up around a lot of guns and a lot of different people and surrounded by that. And for me, I love my guns, right? I love hunting, I love fishing, I love my semi-auto Benelli. Love that thing to hunt with, and it's just I think there's so much convoluted noise out there that I never really know how to filter it all out. I know where I stand, and I know my opinions and my beliefs on it, and I like my right to bear arms. I think it's a part of what makes this country great.
Yeah.
Do I think that certain things are necessary to have? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends completely on situation or everyone else's. But for me, I love my right to bear arms. I love my ability to have my collections. Like I want to collect every Model 700. I want to collect every Model 7, that kind of deal. I like that kind of thing, and shall not be infringed is a big part of a lot of people's lives. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that and it. I feel like I can kind of understand where they're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
but one thing I feel like kind of like trumps it in a way, I guess you could say, is
Mm-hmm.
like who is one adult to tell another adult that they can't have something, kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that gets into a really libertarian argument very
Yeah,
quickly on, who's to say I can't do this or that. And then you get to the point of, well, why do laws exist and all this other stuff. So
yeah,
I think it can get very convoluted very quickly on a lot of different fronts. For me personally, it's guns are a huge part of my life growing up. And I feel like so many people are really disconnected from guns that they never grew up with them. No one ever taught them how to hold one safely, how to operate one safely,
yeah,
how to that gun safety, and just holding and experiencing and being a part of that, I think is a big thing lacking in today's society. And I was one of the rare few, I guess, in today's situation that I grew up to respect guns. I know how to maintain them, how to clean them, how to show respect to that firearm.
yeah,
So I feel like a lot of people are very misinformed on a lot of different subjects, but I know what I'm informed on, and I know that I feel like a lot of people get this idea of, well, they're coming after all your guns, all this other stuff, and I think it'll all come out in the wash. I'm not really super worried about someone kicking down my door to come and get what I have.
yeah. That, and if you kind of like look at history, there's always a pendulum and it swings
Mm-hmm.
right to left.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we're now in the time where we're starting to see it swing back to the right. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it might swing back to the right pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like it seems like it's more of an extreme time just because of
Mm-hmm.
how extreme it went the
Mm-hmm.
other way.
Yeah.
Um, so with your job, obviously the market predicts a lot of things. What do you? How does the next like presidential election affect that?
Well, that could open up a whole can of worms because trade wars and embargoes and determining who can buy what. If China is not allowed to buy anything and the U.S. isn't allowed to sell anything to certain countries, so that could be a huge factor, right? It can also be a factor in interest, inflation, how the markets react to that. So honestly, I could tell you one thing, and then the market will do a completely different thing the next day. I can try to build an informed opinion on why I got that wrong or why I got it right, but you never know until it happens because things, especially in those kind of situations where you have such a heated environment on both the market and the political side of things can get crazy really quickly. And I'm still new, right? I haven't experienced this over 20 years or 10 years or however long. So I don't have the tenure or experience to fully understand those market swings yet. But all I know is that you learn quickly on the fly and things can change like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. I don't mean to like talk down upon someone,
Mm-hmm.
but growing up as a kid, I felt like the president was like the person
Mm-hmm.
that um, you know represented America, and like that was like the standard of America.
Mm-hmm.
And now to me, I feel like we're very similar in age, 25,
Mm-hmm.
and now it seems like it's like kind of like laughing stock when if you hear the
Yeah.
news, it's like I don't understand like how some of the things that we even discuss or like even topics to have it like the real discussions, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
surprised that some of them are even discussions.
I don't even think America has great options right now for on any right or left. I don't think there's any. Nothing's ever perfect, but I think we've definitely fallen far from grace. And
Yeah,
I think there's so much tension and convoluted opinions flying around in this country, and you know, I just don't think anyone has a great option, right, for anything that's going to be selected and going forward. And I'm along for the ride,
yeah,
right? We're both along for the ride. We're not going to sway the opinions of all these Americans voting. But I just feel like America's is a spot where we don't have great options, like on
yeah,
the right or the left or even down the middle. I just don't. I don't think we have super strong leaders that show up that I think should be, in charge of this great nation, right? And I think it's leading us down a path of more separation and more convoluted discussion and a lot of stuff like that. And yeah, I feel like I feel like so many people in our generation's boat is like I don't I don't like either of these options. One is definitely better than the other, but at what point do you go, this is crazy, guys? Like, how do we step back and go,
Yeah.
look at this rationally? Like, we have one president that loves to start conflict. We have another president that loves to doesn't even know where he is sometimes,
Yeah.
and you're kind of in the middle. But I'm a registered Republican. I know which way my values lie, and it's just so crazy that these are the options that I'm presented with as the leader of the United States of America,
Yeah.
the most powerful country in the world.
Yeah, that and one thing is if you go online, you look at like what the pay is for a lot of those positions of jobs. Uh, Yet those people are making like millions a year, and I feel like it's a touchy subject, and I'm not the most knowledgeable person, but I feel like that's not all regular
Yeah,
trading, I guess
yeah.
you
I
could
don't
say.
like the way that really anything in Washington is operated currently. But again, I'm a young kid. I don't really my opinion doesn't weigh that heavily, but yeah, things are not run in a proper or efficient manner at all. So hopefully we can get some things changed.
Well, and I feel like that's another thing with us being younger is in especially like how our generation is nowadays. Feel like we kind of screw ourselves in a little bit because a lot of the people that do have voices
Mm-hmm.
maybe shouldn't, and maybe the ones that should have voices don't have them. And I feel like we're often not listened to as younger people just
Mm-hmm.
because of, well, you're younger, what do you know? You know,
Yeah.
like we don't have the amount of experience, which is true, but also sometimes it's like, you have like feuds between this country or that country, or this family, that family, these people, whatever, and it's kind of like that shouldn't be the issue as
Mm-hmm.
of why we're making this law or this rule
Mm-hmm.
or these taxes and stuff. And I don't know, like with the taxes, just simply going and buying food nowadays is it's outrageous.
Yeah, yeah. I expected the Midwest taxes to be lower, but they're like 4% higher out here than home.
Really?
Yeah, I think our sales tax in Pennsylvania is 6%, and out here in Kansas it's like nine. What is it? 9.5, nine and three
Yeah, I
quarter.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. So it's taxes are too high. Everything costs too much. Inflation is through the roof. Wages don't really reflect that. So I think this country is not in a great spot.
Yeah.
But there's nothing we can do to change the current atmosphere. It's just looking forward and how things we can make things better. So I think that's a big thing people need to understand when they go to vote in November is which one do you think will actually not only repair this country but this economy that we're in? Because
Yeah.
we're not in a super strong economy right now, and American manufacturing needs to come back. More focus on that needs to be focused on, and I can stand on my ivory tower and say all these things, but it doesn't mean anything unless you actually do something about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's such a big point to talk about. It's just how the situation of things and how we need to change them and improve them.
Yeah. And I also feel like actually being able to sit down and have a civil conversation about these things is
Mm-hmm.
like not heard of nowadays
Mm-hmm.
without people getting mad and just because they have different opinions upon things. Like
Yeah.
there's no debate nowadays. It's either you're on the right or you're on the left, and there's no in between. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're our country isn't. I don't think has ever been more separated before between. There's like so many tribes, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people like to have a lot of different opinions, and I feel like we're so divided. And we need something to bring us together. We really do, because I don't like the current landscape of. There's people that won't talk to other people simply because who they vote for, which I think is insane.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you win some, you lose some, but yeah, everything needs to find its balance, and we're
yeah,
not there.
yeah, for sure. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Nothing in particular, but
Okay.
yeah, I appreciate you asking me to come on for this conversation. Good time, and I appreciate it, especially people like yourself inviting a brand new guy to a new town into different situations and conversations. And it's I usually meet new people through golf and whiskey club here in Abilene and a bunch of other stuff. So it's been a really good experience just meeting new people. People have been super friendly and open, and I appreciate the hospitality.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you came on and
Yeah,
had a good time talking about different things, and we can go get some food or something sometime. I like food, so
good. So do I. I just had to Kansas City barbecue Saturday night at a
Mm,
place called Q39. It was really, really good.
yeah.
It was really good. I love Kansas City barbecue.
Yeah, I went down to Midwest Meats and got
Hmm.
some Wagyu burgers and made it on my new grill that I got. So
That's
smoked
awesome.
those for a while and it was pretty good.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But all right, well, thanks for coming on and
Yeah.
had a good time.
Thanks for
So.
having me. I appreciate it.